Hi, and welcome to the world of major scales, or Theory Assignment 3. All music, virtually all music from around the world, is based on some sort of scale. And since around the 17th century, Western music has been based on major scales and minor scales largely. So we're going to start with just looking at the major scale. We have 15 different major scales. And with your theory assignment, I've written the notes out for you. And what we're going to do today is write the sharps and the flats so that all the scales are correct, basically. Only one of the major scale has no sharps or flats. Everything else has at least one sharp or flat. Okay? Okay, so remembering in your packet of materials, the assignment 3 terms, and also your keyboard picture, which is on page 6. I've folded mine to fit a little better. I want to just review a few terms before we do our first few major scales. Let's look at half steps, okay, and whole steps. So if I move up a half step, I'm always moving to the very next key. So these are half steps, okay? If I'm moving a whole step, I always skip one key. So if I'm moving up a whole step above B, I skip here and I move to here. So this is a whole step above B. Now remember how there are at least 2 different names for the keys. And when we look at the black keys, you can see these labeled names. This key, for instance, can be a D flat. It can also be a C sharp. And these are enharmonic equivalents. They're the same or equivalent if I play them or sing them. D sharp or D flat, C sharp. But if I write them, they look completely different. It's 2 different letter names and 2 different notes. So this is an important concept because all major scales and minor scales are diatonic scales. And diatonic scales just mean we move consecutively from a C to a D to an E to an F. We never repeat a letter name. We would never go from a D to a D sharp, for instance. We never skip a letter name. We'd never go from an F to an A flat, for example. We always use every letter name consecutively. So let's practice moving up diatonic half steps and whole steps. Let's move here. Here's D. All right, first of all, what key is a whole step above D? Which key is a whole step above D? Remember, with a whole step, we have to skip a key and we move to here. So from D to E is a whole step. What is a half step above D? Well, a half step means I move to the very next key, whether white or black, so I'm going to hop up here. This distance is a half step. What is the diatonic half step name, however? If I'm going from a D and I'm moving up a diatonic half step, I move to the next letter name. So if I'm moving from a D, I must go to an E. So a diatonic half step above D is E flat. What is a diatonic whole step above E flat? Let's look at that. I'm going to skip E and hop right to F. So this is a diatonic whole step. Let's do one more, or 2 more. What is a diatonic half step above F? G flat. What is a diatonic whole step above G flat? So with the whole step, I skip the key in the middle, which is G, and I hop over to the next one. This is a whole step. So from G flat to A flat, this is a diatonic whole step. Okay, so that's just a review with the whole steps and the half steps and the diatonic concept. Okay, now let's look at the pattern then of half steps and whole steps in a major scale. we always move from a whole step to a whole step, to a half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. This is on your terms. Let me just put page 2 of your terms in front here. So the pattern for a major scale: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. The only major scale that follows that pattern without adding any sharps or flats is the C major scale. So let's look at the C major scale. The letter name of the scale is also its starting note and its ending note. And what we're doing is we're writing 1 octave, all whole notes, okay? Now, let's just look at the C major scale on the keyboard. So, we're starting with C. Now remember, we move up a whole step first. So a whole step above C, I'm skipping this one, and this is a whole step to D. And look up here, we've got a C. A whole step above C is D. A whole step above D is E, and this is an E. This is our spot that's a half step between the 3rd and the 4th. All right, let's start writing our major scales. We're going to look at the C major scale, and actually the C major scale is the only major scale that has the correct pattern of half steps and whole steps without having to add any sharps or flats, okay? So remember, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step is our pattern for the major scale right here. There's your pattern. Okay. Another way to just remind ourselves of that pattern when we're working on these, remember these are all scale degrees. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You do not need to write these numbers, okay? But I'm writing them here just so we can see. I'm going to put a little bracket where the half steps need to be between the 3rd and the 4th and the 7th and the 8th steps. These need to be half steps. Everything else is a whole step. Now let's follow along. I'm going to use the treble clef to follow, and the scale and the bass clef is exactly the same as this one. So you can choose the clef that you're most comfortable in, and then just make sure that your bass clef looks exactly the same. Okay, so let's start, and let's just follow the pattern so we can really see this. So we start with C. I've got my finger on C, and I've got my pencil on C. Move up on the keyboard first, a whole step. Remember, this is whole step, half, whole, 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 half. So a whole step above C, skip this one and go to here for a whole step, and I have a D, and this is a D. Another whole step from D. Here's a whole step distance from D to E, and this is an E. Now I need a half step. Let's look at E. I move up a half step to F, a whole step to G, another whole step to A, because these distances are always whole steps in a major scale, and one more whole step to B, and then a half step to C. So you can see that the C major scale if we play all the notes, the white keys from C to C, you have a C major scale. You do not need to add any sharps or flats to this one, okay? Now, we're moving in a very particular order where we're going to be adding a sharp with each scale, okay? So we're moving to the G major scale. The name of the scale is G. So the starting note is G, the ending note is G for both the bass clef and the treble clef. I'm going to put little brackets where the half steps need to be so we can remember, and remember all of the other spaces are whole steps. So 1, 2, 3 to 4 is a half step. 5, 6, 7 to 8 is a half step. All of these distance in a major scale, the other ones, they're whole steps. And if you think of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, I just sang a major scale. C, D is a whole step. So it's do to re is a whole step, re to mi is a whole step, mi to fa is a half step, whole, half. So the major scale that most of us know really well, we are automatically singing those patterns of half steps and whole steps, okay? You can start on any note, follow the whole step, half step pattern, and you've got a major scale. So this is what we're doing. And we will be using this assignment for our next assignment as we're getting into more depth with intervals, okay? All right, back to the G major scale. Our starting note is G. Okay, and I'm going to put it here so we can see a little better. Okay, so starting with your G here so we can see. Let's see. And here is your G here. We're going to start by moving up a whole step from G. So a whole step above G. We skip the black key and we go to A. So from G to A is a whole step. And we have another whole step we need to move. So from A to B is a whole step. Now we move a half step. From B to C is a half step. Now we are between the fourth and the fifth notes of the major scale, which is always an interval of a whole step. So a whole step above C is D, and I have a D here. A whole step above D is E, and I have a whole step here. Now, here's the tricky one. I am here between the sixth and the seventh notes, and I'm here. And this must be a whole step. So move up a whole step, a diatonic whole step above E. I'm going to skip F and hop up to F sharp. And so right here I have an E to an F, but I'm going to add a sharp in front of this note so that I still have my whole step distance that I need to have between the sixth and the seventh notes. And then from F sharp, I move a half step up from F sharp to G, and this is my G major scale for the treble clef. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I make sure I put my sharp here. Notice that I put the sharp right in front of the note. It is not correct to write a sharp up here, or even to write a sharp down here. The sharp is specific to the note. So this is a line note. We write the sharp on that line, okay? Okay, let's hop to D major. See if I can just keep moving this way. Okay, it's a D major scale. What's my starting note? D. What's my ending note? D. Okay. And I'm going to mark where my half steps need to occur. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these distances are all whole steps. Half, whole, 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 half. Now, just a little hint here. We went from no sharps or flats with C major, 1 sharp for G, As we move to D major, there will be 2 sharps. The next scale will have 3, the next will have 4, the next will have 5, etc. Okay? So the D major scale starts on D. So we're moving here. Now our first distance needs to be a whole step, so I move a whole step to E, and this is an E. My next distance needs to be a whole step as well. So see how I'm on E? I skip the key that's F, and I hop up to F sharp, and this is an F. And remember, when we move diatonically, we always move to the next letter name. So as we're moving a whole step above E, we know we must be on an F. And remember, we're calling this an F sharp because diatonically we go from an E to an F. If we call this a G flat, we're skipping the letter name F, and we never do that. We would never go from E to G flat in a major scale. So I'm going to add a sharp in front of my F. I'm going to continue up a half step to G, a whole step to A, a whole step to B, and another whole step from B. So take a look at this, and a whole step above B. I skip this key and I move to the black key. I'm moving from a B, so I must call this a C sharp, and this is a C as well. So there's my sharp, and then I'm ending on the D. If you are more comfortable, you can just write your letter names above the notes, if that'll help you keep track of where you are on the keyboard a little better. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. You can have write those so those letter names are in front of you if you like. Let's do one more here for this video. Let's do the A major scale. My starting note is A, my ending note is A. I'm gonna put this like this, and I'm ready to go. Okay, so finding A on my keyboard, and I'm pointing to A here. I'm gonna mark my half steps really quick and move from an A up a whole step to B, up another whole step. Now I'm on B, here's B. Think about where a whole step is above B. I have to skip a key and hop up to the black key. I just came from B, so this will be a C sharp. A half step above C sharp E. A whole step above D is E. Another whole step above E, I skip the key that's F and I hop up to the black key, and this is an F sharp. I'm looking at an F. Plus, I'm moving from an E, I must go to the next letter name, which is an F sharp. Another whole step above F sharp, I'm skipping G and hopping to G sharp, and then I'm up a half step to A. Okay, now I'm going to make sure I've added my sharps to my bass clefs so that my bass clef scale is exactly the same as my treble clef scale. Okay, so I've got, for my D major, I'm looking at my bass clef. I'm going to add my F sharp here and my C sharp here. I'm on my A major scale, and I'm going to add my C sharp here and my F sharp here and my G sharp here. And I've got my A major scale.